Hi there, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to secure your AWS account, how we can manage users, groups, and permissions using IAM. IAM stands for Identity and Access Management. AWS IAM provides fine-grained access control across all of AWS. With IAM, you can specify who can access your services, what are the services, and what are the resources, and under what conditions they can access those services. With IAM policies, you can also manage permission to your workforce and system to ensure least privileged permissions. The rule of least privileged permissions we can apply. IAM is an AWS service that is offered at no additional charge. That is one of the good thing, that there is no charge in maintaining the users, groups, their roles, their permissions and all. So in today's video, we will be discussing about how to create users and all. Now in brief, you can understand over here like AWS identity and access management. So this is who are the users, and we can also single sign on also we can provide with the workloads, with the IAM roles, who can access permission with IAM policies, and what resources they can access within your AWS organizations. So we can clearly specify who can access and what uh, he or she can access the resources. So in today's lab, we will be working on how to create the users and how to create the groups and how to assign users to a group, and what are the roles, what are the permissions we can assign to the roles, whether we can define policies, that is customer managed policies or AWS managed policies, built-in policies that are being managed by the AWS, as well as I will show you how to generate the access keys in order to use the AWS IAM users through the CLI, as well as through the portal also we can use it. So let's move on to the AWS console. So I'm already logged in. So these users are global. So let's first go to the IAM. So you can see it as a global over here. There is no region specific. So first we will create users. So we'll simply click on the add user. Username. Let's say I'm writing over here user T1. And you can see over here what are the access types that we want to provide. Access key based upon access key, and that key will be used, and the secret access key will be used for API, CLI, SDK, and other development tools, as well as we can have a password management console also access also. So enables a password that allow user to sign into AWS management console. So I'm just using this one. So you can also define this one also at the same time. So we can set up a console password auto generated. So it will send an email. So rather than that, I will just remove this required password reset. So I'm putting a custom password. And then I can go to the next permissions. So I can keep this all as it is. So we are not going to add to a group. Copy permission from existing user if you are creating a second user and you have already given some permission. And we can also attach some existing policies for the access. So let's say if I want to give the S3, now this user is not having any access, so I can give him access for S3. You can see S3 full access. I can choose over here and you can click next. So this is how we can attach existing policy. So for the time being, I'm not adding any policy to the user. Just I'll move next. And if you want to define some tags, So that's it. We have created a user whose permissions are not being set. Okay, so these are the access key. So we can download the CSV file and we can download the secret, or we can send an email to the user regarding the instructions that is being used to log into the account. So you can see this is a login. So I'm copying this one. I'll just use another browser in order to log into that account. So you can see IAM user, that is user T1, and the password. So once you log in, and if you want to access any one of the services, so you can type it over here S3. So you can see none of the buckets are being shown over here because this user is not having any permission to list the buckets. So we can go back over here. We'll just keep as it is for the time being now. So we can just close it over here. So that was our user T1. Similarly, I will add another user. Let's say user T2. Again, I'm choosing this all and I'm putting a custom password. You can remove this one. So that is basically create a new password at the next sign in. When the user first time signs in, there will be option to change the password. Next, permission. Again, I'm not adding any permission. If you have added any permission to the existing user, you can just copy from there, like user T1 and whatever the permissions. You can see it's not being assigned any group. No attached policies are there. So those are basically the inline policies. Nothing is being attached to the user one. So I will just keep as it is. So without any defining any policies, I'm just adding the user, no tags. So that's it. So you can download again the credentials, and you can just keep this console over here in order to log into that user. Now coming back to the groups over here, let's create a group over here. So I'm creating a group S3 user access, user T access. So this is a group I'm creating. I'll let it be S3 access. I'll keep it simple. S3 user access. And then I can add any users. So these are the users that I want to add it to the group. So it's showing you all the list of users and what policy I want to assign. Let's say S3. So I want to assign S3 full access to the particular group. So I'm not assigning the policy to individual ones. So I'm assigning to the whole group. So that's how create the group. So you can see the permissions are being defined. So in the users also, you can see over here, user T1. I'm logged in last activity. So you can just click on the user one over here. And you can see over here the groups. It belongs to S3 user access, and it is having Amazon S3 full access. In the permissions also, you can see over here, and this Amazon S3 full access, it is AWS managed policy from group S3 user access. Now we can go back to the group and we can see over here S3 user access. These are the two users that are there in this group. And what are the permissions? I have given S3 full access. You can search over here, more permissions, or you can just add attach policies over here. You can also search, let's say if I want to give Lambda execution some policies. So if I want to give Lambda, let's say if I want to give AWS Lambda basic execution role, I can add the permissions to that particular. So I'm adding to the group. So of course, the users will also be assigned those permissions. Now here there is another interesting thing, create inline policy is also there. If you want to create inline policy, so we can choose the service over here. We can write it over here S3. So I'm choosing over here S3. Then you can choose all S3 actions. You can see list, read, tagging, write, permission management. You can see these are the resources over here we can define. And also we can define the request condition, like what is the source IP, or we can define some condition like the region. We can define over here the region. You can just drag it down, AWS S3. So here you can define the source region, yeah, requested tag and all, principal ARN. So here basically we can define what are the condition key and what is the qualifier. So first we have to, let's say if I'm choosing over here, let me choose, let's say the username should be for any value in the request, and the operator string equals to, let's say, user T1. So like this, I can define an inline policy, and then I can review the policy and I can create that one. So either you can use this one, or you can just use a JSON file. Here also you can define an inline policy accordingly, whatever your requirements are, rather than giving the full permissions in order to the into the group. So we can define our own policies over here, create inline policies. Even while attaching also, you can see we are having our own policies also defined. So let's say if we are having over here certain roles I am creating, let's say I'm creating a new role over here. But before moving on to the role, so let's come back to our user groups over here. So to this group, I have given the S3 full access. So just we will go back to our user. This is my user T1. So I will just refresh this one. So now you can see I have all the access to full access to all the buckets. Okay, so now we will go back to our root user. So let's say I'll go to the permissions over here. So I'll just remove this permission and delete. So I'm removing from the group as well as to remove from the user. So let's refresh again. You can see you don't have permission to list the buckets also. So this is how we can assign the policies to the groups and then to the users also, or we can assign to the individual users also by going to that particular user, and then to that user I can add the permissions over here, like attach existing policies, and then here I can put it over here S3. So you can see S3 full access. Next, add permissions. That's it. So now if I go back to the same user, you can see it starts showing the S3 buckets. But it is not valid for the user T2 because we have removed the permissions from the group. We have only assigned to the individual user. So you can see over here, this particular user 2 is still not having any permissions. So only AWS Lambda S3 permission has been removed. So I'll go back to my user over here. I will remove the permission again from user T1, S3 full access. Let me Go to the user back again. So you can see over here for the user one, there is this AWS, this S3 full access is there. So I'll just remove this policy from here, detach. These are built-in policies. So we just detach from the user. Now, if you go back over here, again, if I refresh, you can see there is no permission. Now coming back to the roles over here. Now, before moving to the roles, another thing over here, like users, if I go to the user one, you can see we can have the security credentials while we were creating the user. That time also it was showing you how to create the access key. So you can see this was the access key that was being generated when we were creating the user. So now there is no secret we can view. That's why it is one time only. So we can keep it download and keep it a safe place, or we can send the email also. Now, if this key is not in use, we can just make it as inactive and just deactivate that one. And then we can create a new access key and download the CSV file. So you can see there is a warning, never post your secret keys on public platform. So I'm not clicking on this. Say this is the access key ID. That way we can use it for AWS CLI in order to use the CLI in order to log into any access the resources that we want. Now coming back to the roles, even we can also have over here, while security credentials, you can see we have, now we can delete from here once it is removed. Let me copy this one. Now you can see we can have SSH keys also for AWS code commit, even get credentials also we can generate. Even we can generate credentials for Amazon key spaces for this Apache Cassandra. So these are the things that we can do from the security credentials. Tags is not their group. It is currently belonging to still to the same group. And this is the AWS Lambda basic execution role that is being assigned to the group, and it is applicable to all the users. Now coming back to the roles over here. So let's create a role over here. So you can see what service you want to use it. So what are the, let's say if I'm using this AWS service, so roles are basically related to the service. So I can choose over here S3, and then let's say if I'm using all S3, even I can also add some more S3 full access. Next, I will define a role over here, my S3 role. So allows S3 to call AWS services on your behalf. You can add some permission. So you can see these are the permission that are being added, and it is AWS managed. So I will just create a role. So under the roles, you can see my S3 role. So this is a role I have created. So you can see over here, my S3 role has been created. So this is basically, we can create the specific permission with credentials, and it is valid for short duration, and we can assign to a Lambda that particular role, or SNS topics, we can assign this roles, and that we can utilize it for a shorter duration. Now coming back to the policies over here, now we can create our own policy over here. So as I shown you in the previous example also, like we can choose a service. Let's say I'm choosing over here S3, and I'm giving full X, or let's say list I'm giving, and I'm giving That's it. So I'll just list the S3 buckets and click next. So there are two warnings over here. So we need to specify the list error. Let's choose over here because we can choose list access points, list bucket version. So these are everything getting involved. So let's say if I'm making it list S3 all, so we can just next tag. So we have still 8 warnings are there. Okay, coming back to this one, so we can choose over here S3, and then we can, instead of this all, I will just choose over here list bucket, and then you can see it's coming as a specify the ARN. So I'm choosing it as all resources, and then I can click next and next. So I can give the name to it, my S3 access, my S3 access policy, and you can define some description as you wish, and you can see what are the things that it is allowing us to do and create the policy. So I can check over here my S3 access policy. Now this policy, I'll just go to the user. I'll select this user T1, and I will just click on over here, add permissions, attach existing policy directly, my S3 access policy. Next, add permissions. So to this user, I have added this policy that I have just created, and that is managed policy that I have created, customer managed policy. Let's go back to our console over here for the user T1. So when I refresh this one, you can see it is okay. You still don't have the permission. Yes, still list all. When I refresh this page, let me refresh again. It may take few seconds to refresh. Okay, we can see still we cannot access over here. I think I make some mistake while adding the policies. Let's go back to my, let me save this policy over here. So policies, I will go to my S3 my S3 access policy over here, and then I'll select the policy, edit the policy. So here, okay, I have chosen over here list bucket. So instead of using a list bucket, I have to use over here list all my buckets. Because if you choose a list bucket, you need to specify the bucket ARN. Okay, that was a mistake. Let's try now. Review policy, save the changes. Now go back to my user, refresh. So now you can see all the buckets, but you can see there's insufficient permissions. I cannot access them. Just I have a list bucket permission provided to the user. So this is how you can utilize the policies, single policies that you can assign to the user. Roles you can define to Lambda or any execution roles for a short duration, or for importing the records that time if you're creating a rule execution role over there in order to import data. Like if you have seen my example in for DynamoDB and the Lambda running a EC2 instance, you can see I was creating a role, short duration roles for giving permissions to import the data from the CSV to the DynamoDB and executing the EC2 instance. So that time I was using the roles. And you can also see over here the users. Either you put it in a group and then give the permissions, whatever you want. You can define your own policies. Now you can see over here user groups over here. This was my group. Even I can go to the permission over here and you can see add permission, attach policies. So you can see my S3 access policy. So I can assign to the group. So now both the users are having the permission in order to access the S3 list the buckets basically. So you can see over here policies, my S3 access policy that is being attached, and the group also it is having this too. As a group, it is having as two. As a user directly, this policy has been attached. So these are the few basic things like how we can utilize the policies, how we can add the permission to access the resources that we have. And we can create our own custom inline policies and we can attach to the group or a user we can define, or we can define some execution roles. And in this one, you can see identity providers are there. We can add a provider single sign-on. So for this, I will be making a new video for this, like how we can have establish a trust between this AWS account and SAML 2.0 and how to use this OpenID Connect like identity providers such as Google or Facebook or whatever we want. And then what are the audience over here? Coming to the account settings, there is a password, minimum password length we have defined. And these are the regions that are by default active for this. And there is also a session tokens, STS endpoints are also there. So for this, I'll be making a new video in order to explain you the concept of STS endpoints and how we can use it. We can also have a credential report, activities, rules also we can define. For this, I will create a separate video. For this video, we just have gone through the access management, how to create users, user groups, and how to define a policies. You can define your custom policies, or you can use the AWS managed policies, how to create roles. So that's all. Let's clean up this one. So we can select the users and delete the users. Although it is, we never be charged for this, it is free, but still it's better to clean up. Then we can go to the user groups. This was the user group created. Oops, we can just go back and click delete group. And in the policies also, my S3 access policies, you can select that and you can action delete. If you want to keep it the policy and you can just detach from the user also, you can do. I'm just deleting. That's it. So you can see in this user panel over here, it is showing which account was active, how many days and all, and which is not active, not being used and all, with the green and this red and yellow symbols over here. I hope you liked my video. In the upcoming videos, we will discuss more about IAM and how we can interact with this roles with the Lambda and all. You can just follow my previous video also with the Lambda and DynamoDB, in which I have explained how to create rules and how to attach those rules for execution. So in the upcoming videos, we will be discussing more about like how we can utilize this users and how each individual user can have their sign-in consoles and all, and more permissions we can define. Thanks for watching. Please do like, share, and subscribe to my channel.